I, as many of you, are either a member or descendant of the greatest generation. My father was one of 7 brothers who served in World War II. My mama watched her 7 sons go off to war. 7 times she had to say goodbye to her sons. She prayed for each of those 7 sons, and she cried and she shed tears for each one. Her day was weighed down with thoughts for each son as they were spread throughout the entire war zone worldwide. Her oldest son, my uncle with the 82nd Airborne Division, jumped into St. Mary-Calise on D-Day, June 6, 1944. He never returned. His body was found in the hedgerows outside the city. My mama was given the option of having my uncle's remains sent home or interred in France on the battlefield. Her response was, "God decided that my son died with his friends in the defense of our country. Let him remain with them in tribute to their courage." My grandmother, on my mother's side, sent 2 sons to World War II. One was a Seabee, and the other an Army physician. The physician made many multiple island landings in the Pacific Theater. How many tears can a mother shed upon hearing of her son going into harm's way multiple times? My uncle was trained to treat the horrors of a war. However, he was personally engaged in hand-to-hand combat with the enemy. He had to take a life to survive. This from a man who was trained to heal. The scars of combat remained with him his entire life. My father's parents were immigrants from French Canada. My mother's family came to this country from Italy through Ellis Island. These elders never wore the uniform for their new country, but they paid a price for their patriotism with their children. Theirs was not some well-established military heritage dating back to the Revolution or some Ivy League education. Both sides of the family singularly gave me strength and purpose to pursue a path of service to country. They all shared a pride in service, pride in country, pride in sacrifice, a love of God and family. These were the values of patriotism which were shared by these 2 separate families and imparted upon me. Closer to my age are my cousins and dear friends who served in Vietnam and Desert Storm. They were in the active duty, reserve, and National Guard. They all served honorably and answered unequivocally the call of our nation. However, at the time, these Vietnam vets were not judged by their heroic deeds and devotion to our country, but by individuals who confused their patriotism and loyalty with those of a political course of action. It was not too many years later that our nation was able to see the wrongness it had done to these faithful service members. As a grateful nation, we offered our humble apologies for being so short-sighted and not fully appreciating these veterans' devotion above self to country. Truly remarkable, however, was the act of selfless patriotism that our Vietnam brothers and sisters demonstrated later in life. Collectively, they vowed to never again allow those who go in harm's way to ever again be denied the honor of our service to our country to go unrecognized. They worked unselfishly, along with the veterans of other eras, toward the goal that we who serve following them will never be met with an attitude of ungraciousness or malice. These veterans have collectively worked to an end that as we arrive home from battle, we are met as champions from a welcoming nation for service, not victims of political policies. I want to personally, at this time, to thank all our veteran brothers and sisters for that honor. Your act of patriotism has ensured that no future service member will ever again endure the harshness which you encountered upon returning home from battle. Each one of us has a call to demonstrate our patriotism in defining our country's course through the ages. In a free society as ours, voting is not a gift, but a privilege. Voting is not an option, but an obligation. Your vote is your voice of freedom translating an ideal into action. Through the voting process, we are realizing the hopes and dreams of our forefathers for a democratic government. A government where there is a peaceful transition of power. There are no tanks in our town square, no bloodshed between political foes, no fear to question the policymakers and make them accountable publicly. In fact, we celebrate our changing governmental parties with parades, buffet lines, and grand festivals. The simple act of voting, which we at times take for granted, is the patriotic reinforcing and strengthening of our way of government by the power of the people in a unified voice. As chief nurse anesthetist being deployed to a battle zone on 3 separate occasions, Kosovo and Iraq twice, I have had the privilege to witness patriotism of the highest degree shown by our service members. To ensure our freedom was a greater purpose than their personal safety. Our young men and women went about their jobs, whatever their military specialty, rank, or branch of service. They perceived their position within the military not as a job, but a calling. These men and women have made a self-sacrificing decision to put aside personal safety and to defend our nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Their patriotism is the same as those before us. Theirs is the safety net to protect our freedoms. Gentlemen and ladies, I offer you a basic premise that our Constitution and Bill of Rights that we defend, celebrate, and hold so dear to our way of life is not as respected by the enemies of our nation. What they do respect and fear, however, is the commitment and determination of those who volunteer to wear the uniform and all the citizens of this great country to sacrifice and defend our freedoms in a moral and ethical manner which is unprecedented and recognized by the entire world. That patriotic determination is forged by the blood and steel resolve of each citizen to protect and perpetuate our position as leaders of freedom throughout the world. Our approach to individual liberties, freedoms, and government is the standard by which all peoples of the world stand in awe and wish to replicate. War is the great equalizer of equality. The IEDs, mortars, missiles, bullets, rockets have no memory, no consciousness, and no morals. These instruments of war are indiscriminate in their destructive force. In the war on terror, there is no forward edge to the battle. The battle surrounds you, and it is everywhere. All are equally susceptible to their appalling effects, to include our sisters in uniform. And this was a new development on the war on terror: the severe injuries of our fellow females in uniform. The American female service members are assigned within the same combat area, performing tasks that at one time were labeled male only. These fellow sisters in arms experience the same devastating injuries and require the same level of life-saving surgery as any other defender of freedom. Since I was the proud father of 5 wonderful daughters, this affected me greatly. The level of patriotism and professionalism displayed by our female contingent was truly inspirational, and I was proud to stand equally among them. During this last deployment,